Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome back to another video. With the season winding down and we just kind of waiting for more news to come, we want to look and pull it back the lens a little bit to go out of the country to Japan. Everybody's talking about Munetaka Murakami, but we want to focus on a little bit of a different player, Kazuma Okamoto. So this guy is, still talked about. I would say he's pretty equal to Munetaka Murakami, a tall guy, 6 foot. And he would be a great fit for the Blue Jays. I just want to read this kind of news article. There was six team scouts that went to Japan versus Korea's exhibition game. It was the Phillies, the Yankees, the Padres, the Angels, the White Sox, and of course the Toronto Blue Jays. So we obviously have our eye on Okamoto. Brandon, what are your thoughts on possibly adding him to the team in 2026?
Yeah, it's again, it's important to note that the scouts that were at that game for Okamoto. I mean, there were other players there, but it's an exhibition game, between a lot of not necessarily lesser known players in the NPB and the KBO, but Okamoto was the star. If you sent MLB scouts to that game, it was because you were interested in signing Okamoto. So it's clearly a sign that the Blue Jays at least have interest in the guy, and for good reason. I mean, again, Munetaka Murakami is an excellent hitter. I mean, we know this about him, but he has serious flaws. I mean, it's just the nature of the fact that his strikeout rates have been well documented. He's been striking out a ton in recent years. Again, a lot of people have pointed out the fact that he really struggles with velocity, which obviously major league velocity is a big jump from the NPB, the Japan league velocity. So that's a concern with him, and obviously the fact is he's 25 years old and he's a great power hitter. So he's going to receive a huge contract. Contrast that with Okamoto, who's 29 years old. He's obviously, he doesn't have quite the youthful sort of, hype that Murakami does. He'll receive a lesser contract, and I think he's a more well-rounded hitter. He worked equal 11.3% walk and strikeout rates this year. He's got a very disciplined plate approach. His on-base percentages are always super high. And he's also an excellent power hitter. He's averaged over 33 home runs per season over the last 7 years or besides this year because he had an injury. But in the past 7 years prior, he averaged over 33 home runs a year. So, I mean, this is a really well-rounded guy. Some of the concern, obviously, and I'll let Ethan talk about this in a second, is that he's got defensive questions and, sort of his fit on the Blue Jays roster because the Blue Jays obviously have a lot of great position players. But I think that it's a really good sign that the Blue Jays are not just going to sell out for Murakami. They're willing to hedge their bets on a guy like Okamoto.
Yeah, I think that, and you bring up a very good point. Whenever you acquire a new team member, hopefully, it's, hey, I have a spot for you already and we're going to fit you right in. That's not really the case with the Blue Jays because when it comes to first base, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is an amazing defenseman, and we do not want to put him in the DH slot. It's just not going to happen. Same for if we put Okamoto in the DH slot. I mean, it's a possibility, but George Springer is already there, and he's pretty happy there. And where we've seen with so many other teams, when you move a guy off the DH slot who's happy in the DH slot, you're going to have a lot of heads turn. So that doesn't really look great either. You could put him in the third base slot, and Bo Bichette, that could be a whole different story. Or you could put this guy in the outfield. There are a few options to play with, but this is where things get a little muddy.
Yeah, it's definitely it's worth noting. Like Munetaka Murakami is going to be a first baseman. He's played third base in the NPB. He's going to be a first baseman in the major leagues. It's just kind of where he's going to be stuck in professional baseball stateside because of his defensive limitations. Okamoto's got a little bit more versatility. I personally don't think he's a good enough defender to stick at third base. That's obviously not a huge deal for the Blue Jays because of guys like Addison Barger and Ernie Clement. They have plenty of, if they re-sign Bo Bichette, they move him to third base. Who knows about that? But obviously there's options to play. I think potentially sticking him in one of the corner outfield spots could work. Again, obviously, like, as we pointed out, guys like Nathan Lucas and Anthony Santander, if he's healthy, might take up those spots. So it's definitely not a perfect roster fit. But, again, especially if Bo Bichette leaves, the Blue Jays need, again, another professional hitter, right? One of these, contact guys who gets on base a lot. That's exactly what Okamoto is. I mean, it's just, I mean, this year, again, he only played in, some 70 odd games because of an injury. But he hit, a 327 average, a nearly 600 slugging percentage. Again, I mean, it's just a really talented guy who has proven against really good pitching in Japan that he's probably a better bet to translate to the major leagues than Murakami is. It's just obviously Murakami's upside is higher. So I think it's really weighing, do you want to, bid on that upside and hoping that Murakami is going to pan out with his legendary power, or do you want a guy who I think is more of a sure thing and has a higher floor?
Regardless of what happens, I think the Blue Jays are very smart with their moves, and acquiring him for whatever position he ends up in, I think would be great for the team. I will say, and you and I have talked about it before on some of our sister sites for Diamond Centric, what would happen in the outfield if we got sort of we've used this term log jam before. We've used it
Mhm.
talking about the Red Sox and how, you have new players come in and you have veteran players who you kind of have to take out of the slot. You mentioned people like Anthony Santander, who has not been on the team, for long, but who has, kind of been in the outfield before. Where do you think, Okamoto's fit would be best? And do you think we should keep him with the veteran players or kind of, cycle him in with these newer players? Because pretty much what you've summed up here and what we already know is he's a veteran player in the Japanese league. He has this experience already. Yeah, he has to get used to American rules, but, so many Japanese players, have made this transition already. It's really not that hard.
Yeah, no, it's again, pitchers have had more success than hitters for sure. I'm obviously Shohei Ohtani is like his own animal, but I mean, it's just, it's really, it's definitely not going to be, when you if you get Okamoto, it's not a guarantee that he's going to be, an MVP contender or anything. But yeah, I think I think if it works out positionally, his best position is going to be left field because Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is just going to be at first base. Again, there might be some roster maneuvering that's required there. I don't know if Anthony Santander is tradable right now with his contract. I mean, again, it would require some sort of jigsaw puzzling. But either way, I think again, it's just one of those things where the guy's bat is so good. If he can just play a passable defense at really any position that's open on this roster, he's going to be a valuable player and he's going to be a worthwhile buy. But as always, we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on the topic. Do you have any thoughts between Murakami and Okamoto? Do you think the Blue Jays should pursue one over the other? Do you think that Okamoto's, better, well-rounded skill set is better for the Blue Jays? Would you rather them sell out for Murakami's power? Let us know. And as always, we'll try to respond to every comment.